Alrighty, here we're moving next part of the segment. Here we have Mr. DJ Bond. Am I pronouncing that right? Bonds.
Bonds, yeah.
Hey, DJ Bonds, man. I appreciate you coming out and having a conversation with us, man.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, man. So you seem like a soft-spoken guy. I've just had a couple conversations, a small sentence with you, but man, how long you been fighting for?
I've been fighting for about 15 years. About 15 years.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I think I've been pro for about 10 now.
Nice.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind me asking, what is your record right now as a pro?
Pro, I am 13-4.
Nice.
14, I'm about to be 14.
Nice.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So like, I always like, these are just basic questions because I like to get to know people. Like, what led you to wanting to box? I mean, when you were growing up, like, what age did you start boxing?
So I'm nothing like Ivy. She grew up, she was 8 years old. And she started fighting, with real competition. She was like, is she a gold medalist? Yeah, see, she's a gold medalist. I'm like a hood medalist. I fought on the street.
Hey, man.
I didn't have
hands rated E for everyone, dog.
Yeah, so. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so what led you to wanting to box? Like once.
Well, it was really just that, just fighting on the street. Ended up having to go to court because some people like to tell things like that. So one of the judges had told me, he's like, well, if part of your probation is to get into some kind of combat sport, you know what I mean? And, I ended up finding boxing and things like that. And that's how it all started right there.
Nice. So like once you got in there and you were like, oh, damn, I really kind of like doing this, like how did the passion or kind of like fall for it? Is it just, you felt like you needed to be there? And after a while, you're like, I want to be here.
Yeah, it's something like that. It was just really trying to find something different than just being out on the streets. You know what I mean? And with the judge doing that, I had a couple uncles that are like, you got what it takes. You know what I mean? You should just go pro. So I didn't have too many amateur fights and things like that. But yeah, I just felt like at first it was just something that I was doing for a hobby.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you about my first amateur fight. I went in there, I knocked the dude down. Well, right before the fight, I looked at him. I'm like, what am I really doing in here? You know what I mean? Like, what am I really doing in here? Yeah. Looking at him, he's looking mad. I had knocked him down. I get happy. My family's there cheering me on. And I'm like, yeah, I look back at him and he's looking at me all mad. And again, I'm like,
oh, damn.
Yeah, so just things like that just got me, you know what I mean? Just kept me going.
Yeah, so I know you say you didn't have that many amateur fights, but how many amateur fights did you have?
I want to say maybe 8.
Yeah, yes, and then after a while, you're like, I think I could just go pro. Was that?
Well, it was more of just like, I'm like Unc's age. I'm young enough to not be a grandpa, but I'm still Unc. So it was more one of them things like where people are like, am I too old to do it? You know what I mean? So it was like a now or never type thing. So and then, knowing that you can make money, I had to separate myself to where it was either a hobby or is it going to be a job?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that with that being said, I think that's when you start separating why people do it as a hobby. And then when you start seeing people actually like, hey, I'm a pro athlete.
Yeah.
So how did that little switch in your head kind of like, all right, cool. I had 8 amateurs. This is the kind of now or never kind of like makes sense for me to go to pro. Like, how was that shift in your mind to kind of be like, oh, damn, I'm going to be a pro. Let's get it. Like, talk about that transition.
I think it just really is kind of getting deep. It kind of really depends on the type of coaches you have around you and things like that. Because looking back, when I turned pro, I was winning my first couple fights, but I realized I wasn't really ready to go pro at that particular time. You know what I mean? It was kind of like me being misguided or bad managed. You know what I mean? At the time. So it wasn't really, I'm not going to say it wasn't my decision, but it was more of like me, how you said, looking up to my coaches to make the decision for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they weren't there.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like, we were talking about with Ivy too, in her extensive, amateur career, but you got to have the right pieces around you. Exactly. And, like, if anything that I've been learning is like certain coaches will make or break certain fighters because like, hey, like, I'm not going to lead you down a road thinking that, you're going to go in there and whoop everybody's butt. They wouldn't, steer you wrong, So talk about that relationship with your coaches and over time that you've had to build that confidence to be like, yeah, I'm a pro and I'm gonna be this is what I'm gonna be doing?
You know, honestly, going to that story that I was just saying, I do got to give a shout out to like the coaches that I did have for my first fights. You know what I mean? Because they were really good coaches and things like that, but they weren't just my official coach.
Yeah.
You know, so I never really had an official coach that was gonna take me through my whole career. You know what I mean? So shout out to all the coaches that I've had in the past. I didn't mean no disrespect, but
Yeah, no, yeah. Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah.
You know, I really have to give.
Yeah, but that's the thing too, is it's like you as a combat athlete, you know, sometimes because of facilities or coaches in life, adulting, like sometimes like you might not be able to stick with the same coach or same team and things like that. So talk about your current coaches and the current facility and, you know, the team that you're with right now and how long you've been with them.
So boxing is definitely a team sport. When I first started, before we opened up this gym, me and my business partner Jackie, we had I had a meeting with him, and I'm like, you tell him about the meeting. Right?
Yeah, that's hilarious. We had a meeting. He's like, so he had at the time, him and his coach were on different schedules, so they couldn't really like link up and train as often as they wanted to. So he hit us up. He had posted up, and me and DJ grew up together since the third grade. So
Nice.
We've been. When he says we were fighting on the streets, we were fighting on the streets. I can attest to this. I was there.
Yeah.
And so with he had put it on there that, hey, I'm looking for a midman, I'm looking for this, that, and the third. And me and D have always been good friends. So I was like, hey, what do you need? Like, maybe I can help. At the time I had a lot of downtime. I was waiting for another storm to come, so I really didn't have I used to do auto hail repair. So I was like waiting for work. So meanwhile I had a lot of downtime. I was like, you know what?